that, the 2024 fantasy season has come to an end. What a ride! What a ride it was. We made it here, and we're ready to bring you guys some insight for 2025 to close out the season for you, to give you a little more intel, a little more thoughts to end the year with, to think about for the offseason. It's going to be a good one. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And, man, it's been a crazy year. What a wild one, up and down. But we got some fantasy MVPs to talk about. We're going to give you 7 players to write down for the 2025 season. Do not forget about these guys. They are going to be key in 2025. We got to monitor these guys, watch them in the offseason, see what happens. And we're going to give you a couple of the biggest question marks for fantasy football in 2025. Already thinking about them. About them. Can't get them off my mind. So it's going to be a good one. Before we do all that, follow us on all our socials. All of that is linked down below. And you can get some merch at fourthandtrollstore.com. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you want to win a signed something next year, probably,
we'll see.
Go to our Patreon, patreon.com/fourthandtrollfantasy, because you can help support us as we are continuing to make some documentaries to put out for you guys as well. Coming out soon. So make sure you're sticking around for that as well. So Wes, it's usually, the trollers don't know this, it's usually a 2-man show, or it's usually a 3-man show.
Right.
Three-man effort once we record. Our producer, not here tonight. He and his wife, my brother and sister-in-law, and your cousins, or whatever. They're welcoming a new one to the family. And so it's thrilling, very exciting. So very, very happy for them. Very, very excited. Let's jump into things. Wes, we've got a little special shout out, do you want to call it, before we jump into everything?
As the season has now come to a close, we do want to hear how you have done from the advice that we've given, how we have helped you throughout the season. We have a very special fan who's in our Discord, Jared. Shout out to Jared. This is his second season ever playing fantasy football. And his first season, he followed our advice, finished 4th place in his very first season, decided to give it one more go, called his team Tuddy's Revenge in honor of us. And he said he exclusively followed our advice, even when he didn't agree with it. And so he sent a little PDF to me in advance that he's going to drop in the Discord. So if you haven't seen it, head over to Discord, see exactly how great he did because of our show. This is just a little recap of how we did. This is our victory lap here, essentially. Regular season, finished 13-1. 13-1. And the one loss, he scored 157 points. Would have beat anybody else. Second highest team on the week. Happened to play the highest scoring team. That is an incredible season. And he finished 16-1 with a championship. He won it all, only losing one game the entire year. Wrote down a couple of things here that he said he did. On draft day, he gathered Wes and Noah's preseason top 10 list for all skill positions and used a basic ranking system to create a combined list of their top picks. Luck of the draw, he had first overall. You know who he took? He took Bijan first overall. He skipped over CMC, took Bijan. He said, note, that worked out fantastically for me. Yeah, I'd agree. Not taking Christian McCaffrey was probably good. Still hurt by that. Anyway, here's also what he said. The waiver wire was huge part of his success from our show. He said he had important week-winning games from players like Juwan Jennings, Tank Bigsby, Cedric Tillman, Josh Downs, Jalen McMillan, and Cade Otton that were notable. He said they were just sitting there on the waiver wire because no one saw them coming, but Fourth and Troll did. Very excited to hear that. A couple other things. Favorite parts of the show that helped him out a lot were studs and duds. He loved Fluker for real. He said it was a big part of helping to make good decisions for most of the season. He also said the Discord was a huge help for his incredible season. He said Wes and Noah are active on the Discord to give advice, confirm choices, and talk you down from the ledge. I'm so happy to hear the Discord was a huge help and a huge part of his successful season. He said, in conclusion, Using Fourth and Short with little to no fantasy experience. Again, this is his second ever season. Will win you a lot of games. Fourth and Short helped him so much, and in his case, take you all the way to the championship and win it all. If you're not tuning into Fourth and Short, you're missing out. And he also gave a little note, too. Wes and Noah's advice is greater than the sum of their parts. Both of them had fantastic insight, but taking in tandem, they won me my league. We work together in great ways to help you win. We hope you won in other leagues using our advice. We know a lot of people on our Discord did very, very well. We're so excited for what we get to do in 2025. Stick around, subscribe, join our Discord. We'll help you in all the best ways and get you a championship as well. How about that?
Love it.
Huge
Love it.
success
Yeah.
for
Make
Tutty's
sure
Revenge.
last piece there. Make sure you get into that Discord. We've been talking about all season. The signed James Cook jersey giveaway. And we got a winner. We've drawn the name. User, the Sour Patch Bandit. You are winning the signed James Cook jersey. We'll get with you in the Discord to get your information and get it shipped out to you. Thank you so much for being a part of it, and we will make sure we are getting that out to you ASAP. Make sure we get a hold of you there. It's going to be good way to commemorate the season. We sure hope. So without further ado, Wes, let's jump into the fantasy MVPs. We each have chosen an MVP of the fantasy season, 2024. Who are we going to look back on 2024 as what a year? What a year that guy had. How did he do? How did he help you win? My fantasy MVP for 2024 is Jaden Daniels. QB4 on the season, drafted as the QB 14. Most rushing yards by a rookie quarterback in NFL history. He himself with his team secured a playoff berth for the NFL. And he was the QB7, QB1, and QB4 in the fantasy playoffs. QB1 against the team, the Philadelphia Eagles, that everyone was the most worried about that matchup. If you listen to Fourth and Troll, you started him because he was out there saying, we were out here. I called the shot. I said, listen, he's not going to tank the week, and he has that explosive upside, and he absolutely did. Thrilled for many years to come for Jaden Daniels fantasy managers and Washington Commanders fans as they have their franchise quarterback. Jaden Daniels is my fantasy MVP for 2024.
I love him. I only got him in one league, and it was such a joy to have him and to not play against him. That was also very nice, not playing against Jaden Daniels. Fantasy MVP for me, I got to do a quick shout out because I have to boast about Malik Neighbors because, man, I'm just so grateful that he turned out the way I hoped he would be. I said he'd be wide receiver 5 on the year. He was wide receiver 6 when it was all said and done. Not my fantasy MVP, though. Here's the real one. Brock Bowers. Come on, man.
Oh, man.
This guy was such a positional advantage to what was already a tight end wasteland. It felt at times even worse than usual. And when you normally draft tight ends early, like Dalton Kincaid and Travis Kelce and Sam Laporta and Kyle Pitts, who were miserable like half the season at best, this guy over here was a 10th round pick who finished as obviously the tight end 1 on the season. Pretty much every league I was in, the team that had Brock Bowers made playoffs. And for his final 3 games in the postseason, first week, not all that hot, tight end 22, but 6.5 points, that's fine. But then 20.9 in full PPR, tight end 1, and then tight end 7 with about 15 points. A lot of quarterback woes for the Las Vegas Raiders, and it hardly affected Brock Bowers. He was amazing. I want to give the flowers to Mr. Bowers for all of the things that he did to help everybody. Shout out to Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers for being our fantasy MVPs of 2024.
Yeah, Brock was awesome. I can't wait to see who the first tight end taken in this upcoming year's NFL draft is going to be because
that's the way to go.
I guess they're going to finish as the tight end 1 on the fantasy season. So there you go. Yeah. We're going to figure it out that way. Yeah. Let's jump into the meat of it, Wes. 7 players to write down for 2025. Do not forget about these guys when it comes to draft season. Could be a low ADP. We're looking at value here. All of these guys, we believe, probably should be getting drafted higher than where we're predicting their ADP to be in 2025. almost like an early reachers segment right here, but guys that you
Yeah.
need to be keeping in mind. Write these guys down, bookmark this episode, and we will definitely have some good stuff for you as we continue into the offseason as well. But it will not be the last time you guys hear of these names. Wes, you go first, and we'll ping pong it back and forth a little bit.
All right, these are our players, 7 players to write down for 2025. And like Noah said, these are particularly, most of them are reachers, players that you're not exactly going to take in that first round. Here's the first one I think you got to write down. You got to write down the name Drake May. Rookie quarterback for 2024, second year in 2025. Drake May had a lot of very impressive finishes, especially with what felt like a very hollow offense in New England. First ever game as a starter was the QB 10. And then his second game was a QB 7. We said, go get him. He ended up being one of the safest floor options among all quarterbacks, pretty much at that QB 15 mark week to week. This next season, we're going to see a really good improvement from the guy that's going to have the starting job from week 1. I know his playoff finishes in fantasy weren't all that impressive, but that being said, you know how rookie quarterbacks do. When they have a pretty decent season, they do really well the next year. He's got all this under his belt. I expect great things from a guy that has some pretty good rushing upside as well, especially with whatever the Patriots do in the upcoming NFL draft. Drake May, I can see being a legitimate top 15 quarterback. Very, very low predicted ADP. Write down the name Drake May to draft in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a great one. My first guy you need to write down. The first guy in my eyes that you have to write down to remember for 2025. It's another quarterback. It's Bryce Young. I know we thought Bryce Young was thrown in the trash. Okay, we thought he was done for. We called it what it was. We had inklings of him being a bust in his rookie year that we talked about, and then he got benched for Andy Dalton. And we looked at it as, oh boy, this guy's toast. This guy's done. There's what the end of a career was before it even got started. Bryce Young was the QB 9 from week 11 on throughout the rest of the season for fantasy football. What did we say coming into this season about Dave Canales? We saw what he did for Geno. We saw what he did for Baker. I've got a feeling he's going to be able to do something here with Bryce Young in year 3, another year in the system, and he's going to get a full year with them. Bryce was playing really well. It was exciting to see. He was moving the offense. He was doing something with this Panthers offense that we didn't see him do for the previous many, many games that he played in his rookie year. Lots of good things to come for Bryce Young, I believe. I think they'll take the offseason, they'll look at things, they'll go, what do we need to do to equip him best to succeed? And I think he'll be able to do it. I think it'll be really solid. And I think he's going to be a name that a lot of people are talking about mid-year next year. We're talking about him right now. We want to put him on the radar right now as a guy that you need to write down and be thinking about. So he's my first guy you should be writing down. Yeah.
I wrote him down too. Noah took him from me because we're both in agreement. Bryce Young is someone that I'm actually going to try to target as my QB2 in a draft next year. Probably not my starter, but I'm writing him down, man. I'm really excited about what he's doing in Carolina.
Yeah.
The second player for me, third guy you got to write down for 2025 in fantasy next year is going to go with my quarterback. You got to write down the name Demario Douglas. We had a lot of interesting games from him. We saw a lot of good opportunities between Jacoby Brissett and Drake May. He had some flashes and some good plays, but couldn't quite get the ball rolling because the offense was just struggling a lot and they couldn't really figure out exactly their identity. When you start with Drake May next season, they're going to know from the beginning of training camp and OTAs who their stars are, and that's going to be Demario Douglas. He still finished as the head and shoulders best wide receiver for New England. He had twice as many receptions as the next wide receiver, 63. The next one was Kayshon Boutte with 36. Very, very big difference there. There's no competition for wide receivers. Had the most receiving touchdowns on the team. He had the most targets by far. He is a very impressive guy. We both like him a lot. Demario Douglas, with his third-year leap that I expect from him, and Drake May's second-year leap, I really like the opportunity to get Demario Douglas late in next season's draft and have a potential solid wide receiver 2 in my team. Write down the name Demario Douglas for next season.
Absolutely. Yeah. The next guy you got to write down here, it's a name that is a little more popular than these first three guys that we talked about here, but I don't think people are talking about him enough yet. And so we want to get ahead of this. It's Brian Thomas Jr., rookie wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a.k.a. the PPR wide receiver 4 on the season. Just absolute fumble on my end. I believed I was selling high on both Brian Thomas Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba. around the time that JSN had the 37-point game or whatever it was. And I sold. I believed in what I had. I got George Pickens and Cortland Sutton in return. I believed I was winning that side of the deal. It wasn't bad until George Pickens got hurt, but I mean, it was I would have won the championship in this league had I not done that. Wow. I would have. I threw away my season because of it, and so it was rough. But Brian Thomas Jr., a guy that we have to continue to talk about and remember throughout the offseason. Here's the thing: I believe he'll get his flowers, and I believe it'll be not. He won't just be thrown aside. But he could be going the third or fourth round just because of some of the names that are around and some of the names and the name value of players. And I think he should be going at the top of the second round next year. I think he should be a wide receiver 1 on your team. I believe that's the value he'll have. He'll end up being in my top 10 wide receivers when we come down to it going into 2025 when we put out those lists. And so I really believe Brian Thomas Jr. is a name that we just have to continue. You can't let the sophomore idea of whatever the second year dip could mean or anything like that. I really believe Brian Thomas Jr. is a guy that we need to continue to remember as we go into 2025.
Yeah, wide receiver 4. Unbelievable.
Crazy.
Fifth player to write down for 2025. Someone that we saw a lot of good games from for just a moment, and then he missed the rest of the entire year with a concussion. Write down the name Cedric Tillman. Don't forget what he did in that little stretch when Jameis Winston was finally the starter for the Cleveland Browns. Look what Jerry Jeudy did. He was a top 15 wide receiver in full PPR because Tillman was out. I'm not saying Jerry Jeudy can't be great next season, but don't forget about Cedric Tillman. What he was doing with that Browns offense is awesome. And now, obviously, there are a lot of quarterback confusion questions going into the Cleveland Browns season for 2025, but Cedric Tillman's a guy that can be a really solid wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside that you should try to target next year. He's really, really good. Don't forget that guy. Write down his name, Cedric Tillman, someone you got to try to target for 2025.
Yeah, we all thought, I mean, it was what could have been. It was Cedric Tillman. And then,
yeah,
I hope the guy's okay. Like if he, and this will probably even help even more. It'll help even more for his ADP probably. And I mean, I don't want to be a terrible human and be like, well, fantasy football when the guy's like right. fighting for his life and his well-being. But I mean, yeah, definitely a name to keep remembering there and write down. Last guy for me. You need to write this guy's name down. You need to remember him. It's Xavier Worthy. I can't describe to you guys how good he actually was enough. I can't describe enough because over the second half of the season, he was on a 134 target pace for the year. He exploded in his usage over the second half of the year. His final 7 games, 134 target pace. And the Rashee Rice suspension is still looming, you guys. We didn't get it this season, not to mention the ACL injury. So we're looking at things and we're going, okay, at what point is Rashee Rice back? Worthy is set up, at least for the first half of the season, to establish himself as a very, very solid fantasy football wide receiver for your teams. And people don't realize how good he has been. He was an absolute stud, especially for the fantasy playoffs. Right around that 20-point mark every single week, he was being a major contributor to your team. 9 targets, 11 targets, 11 targets. His usage was beautiful to see. It seems like Andy Reid found maybe a little bit of a player that he can do some things with. So he is my final guy you need to write down for 2025.
Here's my final guy, the 7th player to write down going into 2025 for fantasy football. Write down the name Taysom Hill. Don't forget how important he is to that Saints team, especially with what the quarterback situation looks like. Are they going to keep Derek Carr? Are they going to roll with Spencer Rattler? Who knows? Is Alvin Kamara going to be healthy enough to do well? What are the other wide receivers going to look like? Oh my gosh, there's so much that's confusing for that Saints offense, except for Taysom Hill, who plays quarterback, tight end, running back, wide receiver, punter, head coach, and GM. This guy is a part of the whole Saints organization. We saw that incredible game. Don't think that was a fluke. Yes, he's going to be a little bit of a tricky guy to navigate, but when you have someone with a 50-point ceiling who has no one else that's really competing for the ball in that Saints offense, I like Taysom Hill. Write down that guy's name. He might be a really good option for you in 2025.
There it is. Make sure you have those 7 names written down. They're going to be key as we go into the 2025 season. Get a head start by getting them into your head, into your brain right now. But as you're gearing up, as we're closing out the 2024 season, let's close out things here, Wes, with the biggest questions for fantasy football in 2025. Things that could absolutely change the draft, that could be complete 360s on, or 180s. 360s would just mean you're turning around, but complete 180s on the season for you. My biggest question, Wes, and we'll take a few minutes each here to talk about this and discuss it. What happens to Puka Nacua if Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp retire? What happens if this is it? What happens if this is the last ride? What happens if next season we're coming in and it's a new quarterback and it's no Cooper Kupp and it's just Puka there? What happens to Puka? Because right now, it's hard for me to not imagine he's a surefire top 7 fantasy football player that's selected in the draft next year. So what happens to Puka if these two guys hang it up?
I was imagining actually before we started recording, just in what I wanted to predict as the first 10 players after 2024, and I listed Puka as the 6th player just in my head, because of what he did. And yeah, he's injury prone, but you got to take a shot, and that's with Stafford. And that's with Cooper Kupp on that team. Now, there were some trade rumors earlier at the trade deadline point if they were going to ship out Cooper Kupp because of his age, and it kind of felt like they did because he just disappeared in the fantasy playoffs. But I do wonder if it's not Stafford. Are we going to have a veteran there, or are they going to try to go for a rookie quarterback? Very, very interesting. They're certainly not going to go with Garoppolo if he was to stay with the Rams. That's absurd. So I think the bigger question for me is Matthew Stafford, because if Stafford is not there, if he decides to retire, he might stick around. They made with the playoffs, here we are at the end of December when we're recording this. So we don't know exactly how the Rams do in the postseason, but they made playoffs and they are, I assume they make playoffs. The way that the Rams team looks, I can see Stafford saying, we can do this one more time. We can try. And I can imagine that. If he retires, man, if it's a rookie quarterback, I am worried. I'll put it that way. I'm worried if it's a rookie quarterback. That was our whole thing with Justin Jefferson, because we thought it was going to be J.J. McCarthy. We say he's probably going to be top 10. And then McCarthy was hurt, and Sam Darnold was like, all right, J.J.'s top 10. New wide receiver, too. Yeah, he did well. So I'm not worried about where Kupp goes. I'm worried about Stafford. It's a big question, though. I didn't even think about if Stafford's really going to hang it up after this year.
Yeah. Definitely there's a lot of question marks there. Let us know what you think in the comments. Wes, you've got your biggest question, and then we'll close things out.
One of them. I got a lot of questions, but I'm going to go with one that I think I got burned by the most, which is, can Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison figure this out? We had so many expectations for Marvin Harrison Jr. We both thought Kyler Murray was going to be a top 5 quarterback, and he was so inconsistent. I really want to know what you think. Are they going to figure this out with Marvin Harrison? Because we all just kind of chalked him up to Hall of Fame status. Was going to be great. Everyone figured it was going to be top 10, top 15 at worst. Dude was not that great. He had a couple of solid games to start the year, and that was it. Do you think they figure it out? What do you need to see from the Cardinals offseason to believe in Marvin Harrison to draft him and Kyler?
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for me to draft either of them going into next year. I think I remember after week 2, we were on the pod and I said, there's a real chance we might have just watched his best game of the season. Like I don't know. Like
remember you saying that.
I don't know if that's the case or not, but there's a real chance that it is. And it was. Like it was not the experience we wanted. I've got some quarrels with the offensive coordinator, with some of the play calling. I mean, I think my question actually comes back to Kyler, if I'm being honest. I don't know if Kyler's actually good. I actually just don't know. I was so convinced and ready that it was like the last time he had a 1,000-yard receiver, he was like a top, whatever it was, like a top 5 fantasy, top 6 fantasy quarterback. Like he surely will have that again this year, right? And I think there's a piece of it that's like, well, maybe it was just that he had like DeAndre Hopkins and as a wide receiver 1. Like maybe
Sure.
that was the case.
Proven elite wide receiver, not a rookie with high potential.
I think they need them to figure it out. The team needs them to figure it out, because if they don't, I mean, where do you even go here? They were, I mean, like with like 6 weeks left in the season, they were leading the division, and then they were eliminated from playoffs with 2 weeks left to play. So it's
almost
this
like
is not good stuff. Like
you have to draft them because they have to figure it out. Otherwise, it's Kyler is
maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Arizona.
It's tough. It's tough.
Interesting question.
I don't know what's going to happen, but it's definitely worth thinking about. We definitely had high expectations for sure, and they were not met. So there you have it. That's going to do it for the 2024 fantasy football season for Fourth and Troll Fantasy. Let us know how you did in the comments, and make sure you're following us on all our socials throughout the off season, as we're going to still be getting some stuff out for you. You're going to take a little break, take some time off. We'll obviously be, like I mentioned, dropping a couple documentaries for you guys, and then we'll be back to 1 episode a week around the time of the NFL draft. So probably mid-late April, we will be joining you guys again. It's going to be a good time. This is it, dude. Make Tony the Troll smile by liking, subscribing, and ringing the bell. And we will see you in 2025. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been Fourth and Troll Fantasy. Fourth and Troll Fantasy is a production of FQ Media Group and Selby Artistic Workshop.